All right, so we are live. Yay! Welcome, Gate Scholars, to another Wednesday webinar. We have a special treat for you guys today. We have a special presentation for this webinar with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services department. They're going to come and talk to you all about a really awesome kind of fellowship internship opportunity. And so we can welcome them, and there'll be time for questions afterwards. If anyone has some specific questions, please feel free to use the hashtag AskGMS on Facebook or Twitter, and I will be sure, to convey those questions. So I'm going to turn it over to the folks at U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Feel free. Take it on, guys.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jim Siegel. I'm a biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'm stationed at our National Conservation Training Center, which is located in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. It's about 75 miles from Washington, D.C. I'll be your host today for the Directorate Fellows Program webinar. We will be joined by 3 graduates of the fellowship program that have been recently hired by the Fish and Wildlife Service: Louis, Christine, and Tiana, and also by Jesse Cheek, who oversees the human resources component of the program. Today's webinar will provide you an overview of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and its programs, and will describe an important career opportunity available to you, the Directorate Fellows Program. To begin, I'd like to introduce you to the Fish and Wildlife Service. We are your federal wildlife conservation agency within the U.S. Department of the Interior. We work together with a variety of partners, both government agencies and non-governmental organizations, and we carry out our conservation work on behalf of the American people. Some of our key service programs include the National Wildlife Refuge System, which manages over 560 refuges in all 50 states, totaling about 150 million acres of land conserved for wildlife. Second, the Fisheries and Aquatic Conservation Program, which includes 60 national fish hatcheries, which help to restore declining populations. The Migratory Bird Program, which helps conserve 900 bird species in North America, ranging from songbirds to waterfowl. Our Endangered Species Program helps to conserve both declining American species and those in other countries. One of our programs educates the public about wildlife and wild places, encouraging people to visit their national wildlife refuges, hatcheries, and other public lands, and to get outdoors to enjoy wildlife in their home community. Some pressing issues that we focused on over the last couple of years include mitigating the impacts of climate change on wildlife, the conservation of declining pollinators, including monarch butterflies, educating Americans about the illegal trade in ivory that is decimating African elephant populations, and our Urban Refuge Initiative, which seeks to leverage existing parks and green spaces in our cities to help reconnect people to nature. To remain relevant, the service continues to foster an inclusive organization where perspectives from diverse backgrounds are heard. Take a moment to read this quote from our director, Dan Ash. It describes a vision of the Fish and Wildlife Service that represents the conservation aspirations of all Americans. The service has developed a Directorate Fellows Program to recruit the best college graduates throughout the country in jobs ranging from wildlife biology and natural resource management to public administration. This is why we're talking to you all today. The DFP program can help you launch your career by working with conservation professionals in completing a rigorous summer fellowship. The paid fellowship is 11 weeks long and is located at service facilities located throughout the United States. Program focus areas include the biological sciences, natural resource management, refuges, and fisheries management. The fellowship actually begins with a week-long orientation with other fellows and career advisors at the service's National Conservation Training Center in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. After the orientation, you will begin your 11-week DFP project. The DFP program includes these important financial benefits. First, a living allowance, with many DFP positions also providing housing. Second, a travel allowance, both to the DFP orientation and to your ultimate duty station. The DFP program provides fellows with a hands-on professional experience, including a thorough introduction to the Fish and Wildlife Service and many of its programs. Most importantly for your career, fellows successfully completing their fellowship and all their college degree requirements may be eligible for a permanent position with the Fish and Wildlife Service. Now we'll hear from some former directorate fellows that have been hired by the service after successfully completing their fellowship. Let's start with Louis O. Carranza. Welcome, Louis.
Hi, Jim. Thank you. Hi, this is Louis. My name is Jose Luis Carranza, but I go by Louis' nickname I grew up with. So I'm from Los Angeles County, California, and I graduated from the UC Santa Barbara with the BS in Ecology and Evolution. The one-week orientation at NCTC was amazing, and we were trained in a variety of skills that helped during our 11-week project. So I worked with visitor services at Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge near Denver, and my main duty was to expand the service's outreach into the growing Latino American community in Denver metro area and provide wildlife conservation education with a focus on youth. So I developed and executed Spanish language presentations for both families and for educators. On the side, I also served as a biotech, and I worked on field projects involving bird banding, fish surveys, prairie dog density measurements for black-footed ferret introduction, which is an endangered species, and also worked on some small mammal trapping projects. So I was exactly where you folks were a few years ago. I know what it feels like. Just wanted to say I was glad I went to the DFP route and I was able to secure myself a career in a field I love with the mission I truly believe in. I'm now a full-time fish and wildlife biologist with the Division of Education and Outreach at NCTC, so I work here with Jim, where we focus on building conservation leaders through engagement, education, and employment of youth. In terms of a tip, I don't want to sound cliche here, but I think it's very important to strengthen your networking skills and create a strong relationship with a Fish and Wildlife Service regional recruiter. They are the human resource professionals who help place fellows into the job positions, and I had a very strong connection with mine in California. They'll help you all along the way.
Thanks, Louis, for sharing your story. Next, we'll hear from Tiana Jones, whose DFP project was quite different from Louis'. Tiana, please share your experience with us.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Hi, as Jim said, my name is Tiana Jones. I'm a graduate from the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. My Bachelor's of Science was in Environmental Science, Marine Science concentration. In one word, my DFP orientation was inspirational. I was able to come to NCTC where I got to meet the family of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I had a warm welcome. My project for my DFP was to create an access database of 39 tribal profiles and to create a strategic plan for conservation for working with tribes. I was able to travel to Wind River Reservation, which is located in Wyoming, and also to the National Eagle Repository. I am currently an information specialist within the External Affairs Office and FWS's headquarters office. A few tips that I would like to share with you guys is apply with the end goal in mind, having a wonderful career working with wildlife. 2, make sure that your application is well polished before hitting that submit button. And one quotation I would like to say is, every opportunity is an experience worthwhile, but some are not worth missing out on. Thank you.
Thanks, Tiana. It's great hearing about your work. Next, we'll hear from Christine Peterson, who actually had a really terrific field project.
Hi everyone, my name is Christine. I am originally from New York, and I got a bachelor's degree in biology, and then I continued on to graduate school where I got a master's degree in wildlife biology at the University of Vermont. And my positive experience with the Directorate Fellows Program was a great introduction into the Fish and Wildlife Service family that I'm now proud to be a member of. My project was working on bog turtles, which is an endangered species in the east, and I was stationed at the Annapolis, Maryland field office, and I got to go out and complete habitat surveys to assess the quality of habitat for this endangered species on private lands, and create management plans to help preserve the species into the future. In addition to the main project that I was working on at the Chesapeake Bay field office, I was also afforded the opportunity to work with other professionals in the office on the projects that they complete to get a better idea of exactly what goes on in that office. So I was invited out to join them at Poplar Island, which is a refuge off the eastern coast of Maryland that is actually not accessible to the public, but it's a really important migratory bird breeding spot for waterfowl, and we were able to relocate some abandoned green heron chicks, which is what that picture is of in the bottom left. And we also did some osprey nest surveys. And so I got a really great idea of what the entire office does as a whole instead of just focusing on my project, which I was also able to complete. And I had such an amazing welcome in that office, and everybody was so engaging and made sure to really include me as much as possible in everything that they did throughout the 11 weeks that I was there, that I made everybody cupcakes on my last day to thank them, and I had a really great experience there. And now I work as a fish and wildlife biologist at the National Training Center in the Division of Education and Outreach with Jim and Louie, and I help to carry out youth programs to get students just like you engaged in opportunities and into future career paths in conservation. And my tip would be to choose a project that highlights your skills, but it also pushes you to use them in new and innovative ways into that you haven't used them for during your degree program. And now we're just going to go over some of the human resource aspects of applying to the program. So the basic qualification requirements are that you must be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, and you have to be 18 years old or older, and that all males have to register with the Selective Service. And so the people that are eligible are all students who are either rising seniors in undergraduate school or enrolled in a graduate degree program, and also recent graduates who have completed a four-year degree from December of 2014 or later. And also your GPA has to be 3.0 or higher for undergraduates and graduate students and recent grads. So everyone has to have at least a 3.0. And you have to be available for 12 weeks beginning in mid-May or mid-June of this year. And also, in order to qualify for the program, you have to be able to pass a criminal background check and have a demonstrated interest in or experience in the conservation field as conveyed by your resume. And as mentioned before, you have to be a rising senior, a recent grad, or a graduate student, especially in biological sciences, natural resource fields, and other fields that help to fulfill the Fish and Wildlife Service mission. And we have a total of 55 projects that are available for this year in different fields, including wildlife, fisheries, visitor services, and community and public outreach, education, and geographic information systems, and including other positions that help to support the Fish and Wildlife mission. And upon completing your fellowship and your degree requirements and graduating from your program, you are given a direct hiring status with the Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Park Service, and the Bureau of Land Management for 2 years, and you have to complete the education program that you were enrolled in when you applied for the program. And in order to apply, you are going to go to the Student Conservation Association's website. We're partnering with them this year for the application process, and there's the link for that. And then in order to review this year's project descriptions to see all the different projects that are available, you can go to the second link for the Fish and Wildlife Service Work for Wildlife site. And then if you have any questions and want to find out about other Fish and Wildlife Service career opportunities in fields outside of those addressed in the Directorate Fellows Program, you can contact Brian Acton in our headquarters in DC. He's the workforce recruiter there via his email address. Thank you, and we'll take any questions via Melissa.
So I have a question. This isn't necessarily a question that's come through, but could you all talk a little bit more about, and you mentioned it as you introduced each person, but what types of jobs do folks who go through this program usually end up doing? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So generally the jobs that fellows end up being placed in after they complete the fellowship and their degree requirements are entry-level positions with the service, and there's a wide range available, but as you can tell from the three of us who have all completed the fellowship, two of us are in education and outreach, and then also external affairs, as Tiana mentioned. But we also have people that have been placed in working at refuges with the wildlife refuge system across the U.S. doing field work, so anything from doing fish surveys on the Missouri River to doing wildlife surveys in the prairies of Colorado. And so there are a wide range of positions available, and they come available at different times throughout the year. So we're very much in contact with service employees looking to hire, and we try and place the fellows with the best position for them. So it's not that you are kind of tied into any specific position. You get the choice of positions as they become available after you complete the program by working with the recruiters.
Thank you. Another question is, what makes a strong application? What can students be thinking about as they're creating their application? What makes a strong application stand out from maybe a mediocre or average application?
I think, this is Jim Siegel, I think one of the important things is if people can get any kind of field experience. And when I mean field experience, I don't mean necessarily outdoors, but it might be professional experience in the field of conservation. And so I think people who have worked for summers on various field projects, both indoors and outdoors, that give them conservation experience, that kind of resume will stand out more than a student that has just done coursework. Another thing that a student can do with their coursework is figure out what are some of the field skills that that coursework has taught them. So for instance, if you took a course that taught you a lot of different statistical methods that might be used in field work, then that might stand out more than a student who just said, I took a statistics course. And another thing might be any of the outdoor skills that people have learned in various biology classes, forestry classes, fisheries classes, ecology classes, that might be applicable to a job.
Okay, and another, this is a Melissa question, not a student question. For folks that are present that didn't necessarily come through this fellows program, how did you find your way to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services? If you didn't come through a program like this, how did you find your way to that field?
I can answer that question again. I mean, I entered the Fish and Wildlife Service. I got my eligibility from being a Peace Corps volunteer. Another eligibility, sometimes people get their eligibility to join the Fish and Wildlife Service through the AmeriCorps program. There's a number of other programs that often give you a leg up to getting a job in the Department of Interior and other parts of the U.S. government. There's a lot of different ways that people can gain some experience, but I think that those are some of the most common ways, is some of these kinds of opportunities where people learn some career skills through VISTA, through AmeriCorps, through Peace Corps, and there are a few other types of internship programs in the federal government that often prepare people to enter the federal government besides the DFP program.
And also people that have applied through, even just through USA Jobs, to various summer positions, seasonal positions, and term positions are also options for gaining federal experience in a, as a temporary position, but that experience still counts towards future job applications. But there are lots of different internship and fellowship opportunities, as well as seasonal positions throughout the service.
A lot of those kinds of jobs are sometimes in visitor services at refuges and fish hatcheries, people working as firefighters and other types of forestry positions. There are many park ranger positions, both in the Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Park Service, and other federal agencies. So there's a lot of different summer opportunities, both internships and hourly paid jobs that people can pick up for the summer.
And then one additional question you all may have touched on as well, but if you could expound a little bit. Are there particular or specific majors or coursework that students should be involved in or have taken in order to be considered for the DFP?
So I was part of the first cohort, which was in 2014. Most of the majors were related biologically, not all of them. I believe in my cohort there was an archaeologist, actually, so that was a position as well. But generally they're geared towards conservation as a whole. And I know as the DFP, it's an ever evolving program, and I think as it progresses, it'll be branching out more as well for some of the scholars.
But yeah, there aren't necessarily specific majors. A majority of the projects are biology related, so anything that kind of falls under that biology umbrella, conservation biology, wildlife biology, fisheries management, natural resources, all of those kind of fall under that umbrella. But there are additional projects that are a little bit outside of the biological realm, but they still help support the Fish and Wildlife Service mission. So we even have projects that go all the way to accounting and civil engineering. So there's a wide range, but a lot of the projects are biology, and we also have a law enforcement segment of the Fish and Wildlife Service that so there's kind of a lot of diversity within the projects available as well.
I would add that, like, my major was environmental science, but I also got into a communications fellowship. So my fellowship was in external affairs, which deals with a lot of public communications. So a lot of that was wanting people who maybe have like English degrees, but may have interest in conservation. This would be an opportunity for you to step up and maybe explore your interest in conservation, even though you might not have a direct biological degree. There is use for you within the Fish and Wildlife Service. So we would appreciate your application as well.
Great. Okay, so can you all have a deadline coming up soon? I know that you gave us some information about the link that they can go to, but when is the deadline for applications?
So the current deadline on the SCA website is February 15th. So that's coming up pretty soon. And so the SCA website, if you go to that site, it'll direct you through the whole application process. But once you submit your application, it's kind of a general application. And then once all of those are in, you'll get notification after that initial process to select which projects you'd like to be considered for. But the initial application is kind of a general application, and you won't be asked initially which projects you want to apply for, but then you will get a follow-up contact about which specific projects you want to be considered for.
And how long after submitting the application can students expect to hear back about a final decision?
We don't have an exact date on that. It kind of depends on how many applications that we get. SCA is going to be evaluating the initial applications for eligibility before they get the follow-up question about which projects they want to choose. We're hoping that it only takes a few weeks, but we don't have a real hard and fast date on that.
Okay. So I think those are all of our questions. If GMS scholars have additional questions, you are more than welcome to contact the person, I believe his name is Brian, that's on the PowerPoint, or you can contact me directly at melissa.jordan@gmsp.org, and I can get you connected to the fabulous people that put on this presentation for us this evening. Did you all have any final thoughts as we close out the webinar series?
This is Jim Siegel. One of the things I would encourage any of your students, particularly those with backgrounds in the biological sciences, we would love for you to apply to the DFP program. But if there's certainly a lot of other majors that I think are relevant in the Gates Millennial Scholars Program. And I do know for a fact that there are some Gates Millennial Scholars who are members of the Fish and Wildlife Service. I know one gentleman who works in fisheries, who was a Gates Millennial Scholar about 5 years ago. So I know for a fact that Gates Millennial Scholars would be terrific employees to work with the Fish and Wildlife Service. We'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present to the Scholars Program, and we welcome any questions that you have through Brian or through Melissa.
Fabulous. Okay, well, thank you all again. We appreciate you taking out your time on a Wednesday evening to provide us with some very helpful information. Again, scholars, if you have questions, contact me directly, melissa.jordan@gmsp.org, and I'll get you connected to the right folks. Don't let this opportunity slip away. I know it feels like that deadline is right around the corner, but you can definitely get the application in and finished and at least be considered. If you have questions, like I said before, please email me or call the GMS headquarters, and we'll be sure to get you the information that you need. Thank you all again for your time, and that concludes our Wednesday webinar for February. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.